My dad's funeral turned into a full-on family brawl. Secrets came out, and I don't know if my family will ever recover.
If you've ever been to a small-town funeral, you know there are two types. The first is the quiet, sad one where people bring casseroles, share stories, and everyone hugs too long. The second is the kind where years of repressed drama boil over like an overstuffed crockpot. Ours was the second. My father died suddenly at 67. Heart attack, in his workshop fixing a busted lawnmower carburetor like he always did. One minute he was cursing at rusted bolts, the next he was gone. I thought the funeral would be about him, about celebrating his life, about that stubborn, hard-working man who never once bought anything new if he could rebuild it himself. But what I didn't realize is that funerals aren't always about the dead, they're about the living. And the living had unfinished business. The church was packed. Old neighbors, former co-workers, guys he used to drink with at the VFW. My siblings sat in the front row. Mark, the oldest, self-appointed family leader, Jenny, our sister, always ready with barbed comments, and me, the middle kid who usually tried to play mediator. It started small. The pastor gave a eulogy, and Jenny interrupted. She stood up mid-service to clarify something he said about Dad being a loving husband. Actually, she said, voice sharp, he cheated on Mom for years, so let's not pretend. The whole room gasped like she'd slapped the pastor. My face went hot. Mark hissed, "Sit down!" But she crossed her arms and stayed standing. The pastor fumbled, muttered something about complex lives, and stumbled back into his notes. That was strike one. By the time the burial was over, I could feel the tension like a storm cloud, but the real explosion was waiting at the reception in the church basement. Because that's where the will got mentioned. And once the will entered the conversation, all hell broke loose.
After the burial, everyone shuffled down to the church basement. The smell of overcooked green beans, ham, and too sweet sheet cake hung in the air. Old friends of Dad's were telling fishing stories in one corner, but at our table it was dead quiet except for the sound of plastic forks scratching styrofoam. Then Aunt Linda, who's never been able to resist stirring the pot, leaned over her plate and said, loud enough for the whole table, "So when are y'all reading the will?" Mark cleared his throat like he was suddenly the CEO of Dad's estate. "It'll be soon. I already talked to Dad's lawyer. We'll set a meeting." Jenny rolled her eyes. "Of course you did, because God forbid anything happened without King Mark's approval." I could already feel the migraine building. I tried to change the subject, asked if anyone wanted more tea, but no one heard me. Then Aunt Linda added, "Well, I hope your father left things fair, because everyone knows what he did with the business money." The table went silent. Even the kids at the dessert line seemed to stop clattering. "What do you mean?" Jenny asked, eyes narrowing. Linda sniffed, clearly savoring the moment. "You don't know? He borrowed against the house a few years ago to bail Mark out when his little startup went belly up." Mark slammed his fork down. "That's not true. It wasn't like that." But Jenny was already on her feet, voice sharp. "Are you kidding me? He bailed you out with Mom's house, and you're sitting here pretending to be Mr. Responsible?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't known that either. Dad never told me. Mark turned red. "I paid it back." Jenny's laugh was so bitter it almost cracked. "Oh, sure. With what money? Your other failed project?" The pastor, God bless him, tried to smooth things over with a gentle, "Now, let's remember, this is a time for unity." But it was too late. The fuse was lit. Mark stood up, towering over the table, pointing a finger at Jenny. "At least you were around when Dad needed me. Where the hell were you? Running off to Denver every chance you got, then showing up once a year to collect birthday checks." Jenny shot back. "I left because I couldn't stand watching him lie to Mom. Do you think I didn't know about his other women? Please, half the town knew." Gasps rippled around the room. Someone dropped a plate. That's when Cousin Eric, drunk off his third Bud Light, chimed in with the kind of slurred bluntness that cuts through everything. "Jenny's right. Uncle Carl had a whole other kid." The room exploded. Voices overlapping, chairs scraping, people standing. I felt like I'd slipped into some bad soap opera where everyone talks at once and someone always faints. I wanted to walk out, but part of me needed to hear it. Because in that chaos, I realized this wasn't just grief talking. There were real secrets and they were clawing their way out. And in the middle of that mess, someone finally shouted the words that stopped me cold. "He had another daughter, and she's in this room."
The words hung in the air like a gunshot. He had another daughter, and she's in this room. I swear, for a few seconds, nobody breathed. The only sound was the hum of the old Coke machine in the corner. Then, all at once, everyone started talking, shouting, demanding. Who said that? Is this a joke? Oh my God, who is it? Mark's face went pale, but Jenny looked like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. She folded her arms, chin up, and said, "Yeah, that's right. I wasn't going to be the one to say it, but since it's out there," she let the silence build, milking the drama. Dad had another kid, and some of us have known for years. The whole room spun. My fork clattered out of my hand. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, but my voice sounded far away. Jenny pointed across the basement. At first, I thought she was pointing at one of the cousins or maybe some poor neighbor in the wrong place at the wrong time. But no, she was pointing at Lisa. Lisa, our so-called family friend. The quiet woman in her 40s who lived a few streets over and always brought lasagna when someone was sick. The one who showed up at holidays sometimes because she didn't have family nearby. My brain scrambled to catch up. She'd always been around, always on the periphery. Dad mowed her lawn more than once. He fixed her car for free. Mom never said a word. Lisa's face went beet red. She stood up, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I didn't want this," she said, voice trembling. "I told him it would blow everything up, but he insisted on being there, even if it was from a distance. I thought everyone knew." Mark swore under his breath. Jenny looked vindicated. Aunt Linda muttered something about finally out in the open. I couldn't move. My whole body went numb. Another sister, living right there in town. And Dad kept it secret, kept her secret, while raising us like everything was normal. Then Mom, who'd been sitting in stony silence the whole time, finally stood. Her voice cut through the chaos, sharper than any shout. "Yes, it's true. I knew. I forgave him, and we made an arrangement." The room erupted again. Outrage, disbelief, people demanding explanations. But my mom didn't waver. She looked exhausted, but calm, like this was a storm she'd been weathering alone for decades. Mark grabbed the back of a chair like he needed it to stay upright. Jenny just whispered, "Unbelievable." I looked at Lisa, who looked back at me with eyes that were so much like Dad's it made me sick. All I could think was, how many Sunday dinners, how many Christmases, how many birthdays had we spent with her in the background while I never knew she was blood? And then, as if the moment wasn't insane enough, the lawyer who had come to pay his respects, but clearly had ulterior motives, cleared his throat and said, "Well, this does affect the will." That's when the shouting turned into a full-on screaming match. Chairs scraped, people stood, some stormed out. And in the middle of it all, I just sat there, stunned, wondering if my family had just been permanently destroyed in a church basement.
The church basement had become a battlefield. The funeral casseroles sat untouched, the sheet cake was melting under the fluorescent lights, and everyone was shouting over each other. The lawyer, a nervous man in a gray suit who clearly hadn't expected this, kept trying to calm people down. Please, let's handle this civilly." But his voice was drowned out by my sister Jenny yelling, "She's not even supposed to be here," and Mark barking back, "If Dad acknowledged her, then she is supposed to be here." Lisa sat rigid in her chair, gripping her purse, tears streaming down her face. She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue. She just sat there, absorbing the hatred like she'd known it would come the second the secret got out. Mom, on the other hand, stayed standing, arms crossed, jaw tight. She finally snapped, "Sit down, all of you. This is humiliating." But no one sat. The lawyer cleared his throat again, sweat glistening on his forehead. Mr. Carlson made some adjustments to his estate in recent years. It appears, he fumbled with his briefcase, pulling out a sheaf of papers. It appears he formally named Lisa in his will. The silence that followed was heavier than the yelling had been. "What do you mean named?" Jenny spat. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. He left her a portion of the estate, specifically, half. The earth ripped apart again. Half. Not a token gesture, not a small slice. Half. Jenny screamed, "Over my dead body!" Mark shouted, "This is garbage!" Cousin Eric, still half drunk, muttered, "Well, she is his kid, so," which nearly got him tackled by Jenny. I couldn't even process it. Half. Dad had worked his whole life, penny pinching, fixing, saving, growing that estate, and now half of it was going to someone we hadn't even known was our sister until 20 minutes earlier. The lawyer raised his voice again. "There's more. The other half is divided among the three of you, Mark, Jenny, and," he glanced at me, "you." Jenny's face twisted. "So Lisa gets as much as all three of us combined?" The lawyer nodded, helpless. Mark slammed his fist on the table so hard the coffee cups jumped. "I'll contest it. I don't care how long it takes. I'll fight this until she gets nothing." Jenny chimed in. "Same. This is a betrayal. She doesn't deserve a cent." Lisa finally spoke. Her voice cracked, but she looked at us with this mixture of shame and steel. "I never asked for this. I didn't even know until last year. He came to me. He wanted to make it right." That hit me harder than anything. Last year, while Dad was still alive. He'd made the choice knowing it would rip us apart, but apparently believing it was the only fair thing to do. Mark shook his head. "Fair? Fair? He lied to us our whole lives. He cheated on Mom, and now he's rewarding himself by punishing us." Jenny started crying. Real tears this time, not the sharp, bitter ones. "I wasted so many years being angry at him for cheating, and now this? He has a whole other family. We're a joke." I just sat there, silent, staring at the will in the lawyer's hands. My chest was hollow. I didn't feel anger, not like them, just this deep, sick emptiness, because Dad wasn't here to explain himself, to defend it, to tell us why. All we had were secrets, a divided estate, and the bitter truth that the man we thought we knew had been someone else entirely. And that truth was about to tear us apart forever.
If you've never watched your family fracture in real time, let me tell you, it doesn't happen cleanly. It's not one fight, one dramatic declaration, and then silence. It's a cascade, a series of small detonations, each one making the cracks deeper until there's nothing left to hold together. That night in the church basement was the first explosion. The aftershocks came in the days that followed. Mark and Jenny immediately aligned. For once, they both agreed Lisa was the enemy. The will was tainted. Dad had been manipulated, senile, or both. They were ready to go to war. Lawyers, depositions, dragging Lisa's name through every bit of small-town gossip they could muster. Mom stayed strangely calm. She refused to speak against Lisa. She refused to speak for her either. She just kept repeating, "This is what he chose. I can't change it." That infuriated Jenny, who screamed at her on the phone, "You let this happen! You protected him! You're protecting her!" Mom hung up. And me? I was stuck in the middle, as always. Part of me wanted to scream too. Half the estate? After a lifetime of him preaching fairness, of nickel and diming us over allowances, of lecturing us about responsibility, he turns around and gives half of everything to the daughter he never acknowledged? It felt like betrayal. But another part of me, the part that had looked into Lisa's eyes and seen Dad's eyes staring back, couldn't bring myself to hate her. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't chosen to be born in secret, to grow up without a father, to live in the shadow of a man who played family with us while keeping her at arm's length. The family dinner stopped. The group text died. Every conversation with Mark and Jenny circled back to when we contest the will. They wanted me on their side. "You can't sit on the fence forever," Mark told me one night over the phone, his voice sharp. "You're either with us or with her." I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Then Lisa called me. For the first time ever. Her voice was tentative, careful. She said, "I know you probably hate me, but I wanted you to hear it from me. I didn't want any of this. He found me. He reached out. He was trying to make peace before he died. He told me he loved you all, that he wished he'd been a better man. He thought this was the only way to be fair." I didn't say much. My throat was tight. She finished with, I hope someday you won't see me as your enemy. because I lost him too. That was the line that gutted me. Because she was right. For all the mess, for all the lies, she was grieving too. But try explaining that to Mark and Jenny. To them, compassion was weakness. To them, the only way forward was scorched earth. So, the split became official. Team contest versus team acceptance. And I, the eternal middle child, had to decide which side of the wreckage I was going to stand on.
The legal battle started within a week. Mark and Jenny wasted no time. They found a lawyer in town who specialized in estate disputes, a shark with a cheap suit and a smirk that made me want to shower after just one meeting. The first volley was predictable. They claimed Dad wasn't of sound mind when he updated the will. They dug into his medical records, looking for anything: blood pressure meds, mild forgetfulness, even his occasional slips of memory to paint him as confused and easily manipulated. Lisa, to her credit, didn't fight back dirty. She hired her own lawyer from the next county over, a calm woman who radiated competence. Her defense was simple. Dad had been sharp enough to manage his business, his finances, and his household. If he was lucid enough to run the shop and keep accounts straight, he was lucid enough to sign a will. I was subpoenaed almost immediately. Everyone wanted me to pick a side. The lawyer grilled me. Had I noticed Dad slipping? Had he shown signs of confusion? Had he ever mentioned Lisa to me? Answering was brutal, because the truth was messy. He had seemed forgetful sometimes, but he was also stubborn, lucid, and sharp when he wanted to be. He never told me about Lisa. Never. And yet there she was, undeniable. I could feel the weight of Mark and Jenny's eyes on me as I testified. They wanted me to say, yes, he was slipping. Yes, he was out of his mind. Yes, Lisa must have pressured him. But I couldn't. I told the truth. Dad was complicated. He wasn't perfect, but he knew what he was doing most of the time. He was stubborn, opinionated, and if he wanted something, he made it happen. If he signed that will, it was because he meant it. Mark's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Jenny glared at me like I'd personally stabbed her in the back. That night I got the angriest phone call of my life. Jenny screamed at me for 20 straight minutes. She said I betrayed her, betrayed Mom, betrayed the family. "You're dead to me," she hissed, before hanging up. Mark sent a single text: "You'll regret this." And just like that, I wasn't the middle child anymore. I was the traitor. Meanwhile, Lisa sent me a quiet thank you. Not for taking her side, but for telling the truth. She wrote, "I know it cost you, but you honored him more than anyone else has." The case dragged on for months. Depositions, filings, motions, money bled out of both sides. At one point, Jenny tried to get Mom to testify against Lisa, but Mom refused. She said, "I made peace with this years ago. You all need to do the same." The final ruling came down hard. The will stood. Lisa got half. The rest was divided between us. Mark and Jenny lost it. They stormed out of the courtroom, swearing they'd appeal, but the lawyer quietly told them they had no case. That was it. Over. But it wasn't over for us. Not really. Because even after the gavel came down, the damage lingered. Thanksgiving came and went without a family dinner. Christmas was fractured, with Mom spending it quietly at home while Mark and Jenny hosted separate gatherings and refused to invite me. Lisa sent me a card. Just simple: "Merry Christmas, from your sister." It sat on my desk for weeks. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Because even though my family was shattered, a part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost everything. Maybe I'd gained someone too.
It's been almost a year since Dad's funeral, and the dust has settled, though the cracks remain. Mark hasn't spoken to me since the courtroom. He unfriended me on Facebook, blocked my number, and even told Mom that if she takes my side, he won't bring the grandkids over. Jenny is softer, but not by much. She sends the occasional sharp text, usually attached to some article about greedy, illegitimate heirs. I've stopped responding. Mom is quieter now. She doesn't talk about Dad much, and when she does, it's only in practical terms. Paying bills, fixing the gutters, handling the things he used to handle. I think she's exhausted from holding on to secrets for decades. Sometimes I catch her staring off into space, and I wonder if she's replaying every choice she made. wondering if she could have stopped the implosion that followed his death. As for Lisa, well, Lisa is still here. She didn't run off, didn't disappear once the legal battles ended. She lives in the same small house down the street, and now, for the first time, she doesn't hover on the edges of our lives like a ghost. We've had coffee a few times. At first it was awkward, stilted, two near strangers connected only by blood and betrayal, but slowly the walls came down. She told me about her childhood, how she always suspected the truth, but her mother never confirmed it until Dad reached out a year before he died. She told me about the awkward dinners they had, the guilt in his eyes, how he always said he wished he'd been braver. It hurt to hear, but it also explained more than I wanted to admit. One afternoon, she pulled out a photo album, pictures of Dad, with her, fixing her bike when she was a kid, helping her paint her first apartment. Small, hidden moments of fatherhood he never shared with us. I sat there looking at those photos, and for the first time since the funeral, I cried. Not just for the man I lost, but for the man I never fully knew. And maybe, just maybe, for the sister I never expected to have. Do I forgive him? No, not entirely. Do I forgive Lisa? She doesn't need it. She was as much a victim of his lies as the rest of us. But I've made peace with this. Families don't explode from one secret. They erode over years of silence, of looking away, of pretending. The funeral wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the moment the dam finally broke. Now, my family looks different. Smaller, messier, but maybe more honest. Sometimes I drive past the church basement where it all came apart. I think about the shouting, the accusations, the shock of hearing he had another daughter, and she's in this room. And then I think about Lisa's Christmas card, still tucked in my desk drawer, signed, "From your sister, with hope." For the first time, I think maybe that hope isn't wasted. Because while we lost a father that day, maybe, just maybe, I gained a sister.
I found out my husband cheated on me during our honeymoon. My marriage didn't survive a week. I should have been floating on a cloud. I should have been glowing, blissed out, grateful. That's what a honeymoon is supposed to be, right? Instead, mine became the most humiliating and devastating week of my life. Let me back up. I married James in June. We'd been together 5 years, lived together for 3, and for the most part, I thought we were solid. He was charming in that steady, dependable way, the kind of guy who remembered to take the trash out and made a big deal of my birthday with a homemade cake. Not flashy, but reliable. That's what I thought I was marrying. Our wedding was small but beautiful. Barn venue, fairy lights, my college friends dancing barefoot to bad 90s pop songs. James's vows made half the guests cry. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. We left the reception that night exhausted, happy, a little tipsy. We had an early flight the next morning to Mexico, the trip of a lifetime. And in the first 72 hours, my entire world fell apart. It started with something small. We were unpacking in the hotel room when I noticed he was weirdly protective of his phone. He always kept it close, but this was different. Taking it into the bathroom, flipping it face down on the nightstand. I chalked it up to habit. On our second night, after too many margaritas, he passed out early. His phone buzzed. A notification lit up. A name I didn't recognize. A heart emoji. My stomach dropped. I told myself not to look, I told myself I trusted him, but I couldn't stop. My hands moved on their own. I opened the messages, and my marriage ended right there. The texts weren't old. They weren't some ancient fling resurfacing. They were from last week, from the night before our wedding. Her name was Anna, and the messages made it clear James had slept with her. Not once, multiple times. She asked if he felt guilty at the rehearsal dinner. He replied, "Don't, it was just a fling. You're amazing, but you know I love me." My blood turned cold. I scrolled, numb, through messages about sneaking around, about one last time before I'm a married man, photos, explicit, recent. There was no mistaking it. He hadn't just cheated on me. He'd cheated on me while asking me to marry him. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed staring at his sleeping face and felt something inside me break. I didn't scream. I didn't wake him up. I just sat there until the sun came up, phone clutched in my hand, my wedding ring suddenly heavy like an anchor dragging me down. I'd been married for 3 days and my husband had already destroyed us.
When he finally woke up, groggy and sunburned from the day before, I was already dressed. I'd been sitting at the little balcony table for hours, staring at the waves crashing against the shore and rehearsing what I was going to say. But nothing could prepare me for how it actually came out. The second he mumbled, "Morning, babe," I turned and dropped his phone on the bed. "Who's Anna?" He blinked, still half asleep. "What?" "Anna, the woman you slept with before our wedding. The woman you were texting the night of our rehearsal dinner. Who is she?" His face changed instantly. Not confusion, not guilt, fear. He sat up, fumbling. How? I read the messages," I snapped. My voice cracked. "All of them. The photos, the timing. James, you cheated on me days before you promised me forever. Days." He went pale, then red, then pale again. It wasn't like that. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I laughed, but it came out hollow, ugly. "Didn't mean anything? You were telling her she was amazing while I was getting ready to marry you. You were sneaking around with her while we were planning a future. You brought me here to paradise like nothing happened." He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't want to ruin this. I knew it was wrong, but I love you. I swear I love you. Please, stop." I cut him off. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the chair. "Do you understand what you've done? This isn't a fight we can fix. This is the end. You ended our marriage before it even started." He lunged for me, desperate, trying to grab my hand. "Please, please don't say that. It was a stupid fling. It's over. I'll block her. I'll do anything." I yanked my hand away. "You don't get it. I can't look at you without seeing her, without seeing you lying to my face while you were inside someone else." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. For once, Mr. Charming had no words. I packed my suitcase in silence while he followed me around the room, begging, bargaining, swearing it was nothing. Every word made me colder. Every plea made me angrier. By the time I slammed the suitcase shut, I wasn't even crying anymore. I was just done. I walked out of that hotel room and left him standing there in his swim trunks, barefoot on the tile, staring at the door like he couldn't believe it was closing. And that was the last time I saw my husband as my husband.
I booked a flight home that morning with shaking hands and a credit card I hadn't planned on using. Every tap of the keyboard felt like ripping up the life I just stepped into. Honeymoon suites and champagne brunches weren't supposed to end with a one-way ticket back to reality. James trailed me through the lobby as I checked out, whispering, begging, grabbing for my suitcase handle like if he could just stop me from leaving the hotel, maybe none of this would be real. But I didn't look at him, not once. On the plane, I sat wedged between a grandmother and a college kid, both of them blissfully unaware that the woman in the middle seat was quietly dismantling her marriage before the in-flight snacks even arrived. I stared out the window at the endless ocean below and thought about how 3 days earlier I'd stood in front of everyone I loved and promised forever. 3 days. When I landed back home, I went straight to my best friend's apartment. She opened the door, saw my face, and didn't ask questions. She just made tea, handed me a blanket, and sat with me while I told her everything. By the time I was done, she was furious on my behalf. "You're divorcing him," she said firmly, like it was already decided. And she was right. James blew up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails, long paragraphs about how he made a mistake, how he loved me, how we could get past this. He even emailed me an apology that read like a bad essay, complete with, "In conclusion, please give me another chance." I didn't respond. The hardest part came when I had to face my family. Telling my parents that my brand new marriage was already over felt like announcing a death. My mom cried, my dad swore under his breath, and my little brother asked if he could beat the guy up like we were still kids. They all rallied around me, but the shame burned hot. Within a week, I had contacted a lawyer. Annulment was possible, given the circumstances and the timing, but divorce was cleaner. I signed the papers less than a month after I signed my marriage certificate. When the documents were finalized, James sent one last message. It wasn't an apology. It was bitter, defensive. "You didn't even give me a chance to make it right." I deleted it without replying. It's been months now. Sometimes I wake up and forget, just for a second, that I was ever married at all. Other times, I look at the photos my friends took at the wedding, me in my dress, smiling like I was stepping into a dream, and I want to tear them to shreds. But mostly, I've made peace with it, because as humiliating as it was to have my marriage die on the honeymoon, it would have been worse to spend years with a man who showed me exactly who he was before the ink on our vows had even dried. And if I learned anything, it's this. Sometimes the ugliest truths save you from the longest lies.